we're ground zero for coastal land loss because of subsidence and coastal erosion, but also sea level rise. But we have a conference in New Orleans where the NGA is actually partnering with RESCON. And this is one of the premier conferences anywhere in the world about resiliency. It's about preparing for and recovering from disasters, and it will include now cybersecurity. So I want to put a plug in for this conference with all of the governors. Hopefully you can attend, but at the very least send someone to New Orleans. I think they will get a tremendous amount out of it to the benefit of your state. It happens to be April the 28th through the 30th in New Orleans. And just so you know, the Jazz Fest will be going on at that time. So you might want to come personally. But I can guarantee you it will be a rewarding experience, one where you will learn from academia, international organizations, other states, and business folks from the private sector as well. So I would encourage all of you to give some thought about coming down to New Orleans April 28th through 30th, or at least sending some folks from your administrations.
That's great. Everybody planning to go? Now I am. Well, what about interactions with local governments? How do you help prepare them for these kinds of efforts?
Our biggest stress is land use. We got 11 million people living in the WUI, this wildland-urban interface. And right now, because of these wildfires, folks are having a hard time getting insurance. They're not being renewed. The premiums have gone through the roof. We've got a state plan, the FAIR plan now, where we're seeing huge premium spikes, and the ability to absorb all the private sector abandonment there is going to be challenged. So, we're trying. The stubbornness on land use is difficult, and localism is determinative from a land use perspective. But this is perhaps the most significant thing we can do in terms of being future-proofed, in terms of addressing the issue of resiliency broadly, because there's a general sense of retreat now on the coast, on the coastal bluffs and the like, losing again beaches and the erosion, the king tides now happening not every 100 years, every 10 years, every year, and the challenges associated again with that wildland-urban interface in particular make for a vexing relationship at the moment between the state and local government.
Are the towns and local communities adapting by changing their zoning patterns, their zoning rules, ordinances in either of your states?
We haven't seen it yet. I mean, no, it's difficult. Some of the, we got a housing crisis in California. Last thing we want to do is tell folks not to build housing, particularly in areas where the land's a lot cheaper than some of the urban environments. But it's, you see these master plan communities right in the middle of these zones, and you go, what the hell are these guys thinking? Mm-hmm. And again, you go up that campfire area. I mean, it's a fire, tornadoes coming through. Only one part of that community you can get out. Everybody, you saw all those videos. And we're seeing that replicated over and over in all parts of our state. And so we may come down a little more aggressively with a hammer from the state level. But again, local government, and as we all know, those come from it. That's a stubborn issue to address.
Thank you. Governor Burgum.
I would just say, yeah, we're coming from a state where we believe a lot in local control and self-determination. But even with that, we have to understand that we're in a country where most of the built environment in the last 80 years in this country has been built with that's been automobile-centric and not people-centric. And with that, you end up generally with communities that have been built out, not up, and that creates, the cost of local government, school districts, park districts, all their costs go up, rising property taxes, lots of infrastructure to maintain. I'm sure that the numbers we had on the national numbers include all the, all that horizontal growth. But as a state, we're trying to really, through a thing we call the Main Street Initiative, try to drive private capital to existing infrastructure. That's the highest return for taxpayers. If you can get private capital to go back in where you've got existing infrastructure, as opposed to the opposite, which would be public capital, which is we had a school district that builds a new school, out in a greenfield site a mile or two out of town because the land is cheap. That's actually very expensive for taxpayers. So trying to, we've built dashboards for every community so they can see their own data and try to educate the local decision makers so that they can understand the decisions, the design decisions on where and how you build really make a difference on what then we have to rebuild after we've had a disaster. But the good thing about North Dakota is that virtually everybody in the state is so close to our agricultural roots, where it doesn't matter what year it is, you're dealing with things you can't control with Mother Nature, good years and bad years. And so we've got a lot of people who've got, perseverance and fortitude and willing to work through that. So we got a good spirit of cooperation, but some of these decisions are we're going to have to think differently about the future than we have in the past. And I'd say again on that, technology is changing every job, every company, and every industry, and it's certainly, blowing up segments like retail, and a lot of communities, built outwards because they're trying to accommodate drive-through restaurants and big box retailers, and those models are all under threat because of internet retail selling. And so again, there's an opportunity on those former big box sites for all kinds of infill opportunities to come back and build really tax efficient walkable communities, which helps increase health, increase a sense of community, increases a lot of things that we also spend money on the back end because we're a nation that walks less than any other nation.
Wow, even in North Dakota.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from other governors? Yes, Governor Herbert.
Thank you, Governor Mills. Governor Edwards just reminded me of a lesson I learned from Louisiana. I was visited there about 15 years ago and saw the devastation from Hurricane Katrina and Rita. Lieutenant Governor Mitch Landrieu, now I think he's maybe not the mayor of New Orleans now, but he became the mayor of New Orleans. And he took me around and showed me what had taken place there and kind of the successes and the failures of government. And some of it was the people weren't prepared. And so out of that incident, what we learned in Utah was to put together a program where we enhanced the first responders, local government, which would be the cities and then the counties and then the state. The federal government's a little slower to react. They can help pay bills and come and do the aftermath, but they're not going to be the first responders. And we also put together a program that helps us prepare families, individuals, 72-hour kits. It's always been asked, we call it Be Ready Utah. Be ready for what? Well, fill in the blank. We could have fire, floods, earthquake, drought. We've had all of the above. But individuals and families need to take on the responsibility themselves. We work with our schools, so they have a 12-step program, what they need to do in the schools, along with a 12-step program for families and individuals. They can go to our webpage and get instructions and find out how to take care of, how do you turn off the natural gas in your home? How do you secure your medicines? What do you do about your pets? What about elderly people, maybe your family or your neighbors? And then we took a third step, and that was the private sector businesses. If you have that kind of acute problem, next thing you have looting. Somebody's going to the local Walmart and taking, some kind of issue, whether it be a generator or something to help with your water purification, things you should have had on hand. And so we have now a consolidated 4-step program, private sector, school, business, and government, all working in concert under the heading of Be Ready Utah. It's going to help us. It has helped us already when we've had some fires to have the first responders taken care of. Neighbors act. Government comes in and takes care of the mop-up, the cleanup. But it's a concerted, combined effort, not just looking for the federal government to come in and bail us out. So anyway, it's working for Utah. And again, I thank Louisiana for sharing us that information, which created a great program in Utah.
Thank you, Governor Herbert. It's like, everybody says it can't happen here until it does happen here. And it can happen in any one of our states. These disasters, whether cold, hot, wet, dry, and we've got to be ready. I think we've all sat back for years and years and thought, well, if something bad happens, FEMA will come in, the federal government will help us out. We've got to start this at home, and as you said, building families' resiliency, businesses locally is important, bottom up. Thank you very much.